You're not lazy, you're out of alignment. How often have you called yourself lazy simply because you couldn't get moving? You wake up with a lingering heaviness, a sense that something is off. But instead of questioning the why, you blame yourself. Society has trained us to equate constant action with value. If we're not checking off boxes, climbing ladders, or producing visible results, we're seen as failing. And eventually we internalize that view. I'm lazy. I'm unmotivated. I must be broken. But what if none of that is true? What if what you're calling laziness is actually a signal, an inner message whispering that you're disconnected from something meaningful? When your goals don't reflect your values, when your path feels empty or imposed, your body resists, not out of defiance, but from a lack of purpose. We weren't built to chase things that don't matter to us. We were built to move toward meaning. Think back to a moment in your life when you were truly inspired by a project, a cause, a creative idea. Did you feel lazy then? Probably not, because when something resonates with your soul, motivation flows naturally. Effort doesn't feel like a burden, it becomes a joy. So instead of criticizing yourself for not pushing harder, pause, reflect, ask, is this really laziness or am I simply lost? That question can change everything because you are not broken. You are being redirected. When the world defines you, you lose yourself. In today's world, it's easy to confuse being busy with being fulfilled. From the moment we're old enough to understand expectations, we're handed a checklist. Get good grades, land a stable job, earn more, buy a home, stay productive. And if you're not constantly moving toward one of those goals, society quietly labels you as lazy, lost, or falling behind. But have you ever stopped to ask, whose definition of success am I following? We live in a culture that celebrates hustle and performance, yet leaves little room for stillness, introspection, or purpose. The constant demand to do more drowns out the voice within, the one that knows who you really are and what truly matters to you. This disconnect creates a painful tension. You keep moving but feel like you're going nowhere. You keep achieving but feel hollow inside. As Carl Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes? True direction doesn't come from following someone else's blueprint. It comes from listening to the quiet guidance of your own inner compass. And when that compass is ignored, life begins to feel meaningless, no matter how much you have accomplished. You don't need to do more. You need to align more. Slow down. Tune in. Let your worth be defined not by your output, but by your truth. Because the life you're meant to live won't be found in someone else's expectations. It's waiting quietly inside you, asking to be heard. Stuck? Maybe you're not lazy, just misaligned. Have you ever sat in front of your to-do list, staring blankly, knowing what needs to be done but feeling paralyzed? The tasks are clear, the clock is ticking, and yet your mind resists, your body feels heavy, and your energy evaporates. You might label yourself as unmotivated or undisciplined, but what if the issue isn't about effort at all? What if it's about alignment? The truth is, motivation doesn't thrive in emptiness. It grows where meaning lives. When your actions feel disconnected from your values, dreams, or identity, your entire being pushes back. It's not rebellion, it's wisdom. Your system is signaling that something is off. You're moving, but not in a direction that feeds your soul. Think of a time when you were deeply engaged in something, when your work, your creativity, or even a simple task made you feel alive. You probably didn't need external motivation or discipline. That energy came from within, fueled by purpose. This is why pushing through doesn't always work. You can't force alignment. You have to pause and listen. What are you doing out of obligation rather than desire? Which goals are rooted in fear or comparison instead of passion and meaning? The longer we ignore misalignment, the more stagnant we become. Our goals feel heavy, our energy drains, and we begin to question our worth, when in reality, the only thing missing is connection to what matters. So before you criticize yourself for feeling stuck, ask the deeper question, is what I'm doing in alignment with who I truly am? Because real progress, the kind that feels both energizing and authentic, doesn't come from grinding harder. It comes from getting back in sync with your inner truth. When meaning returns, so does movement. And what once felt like laziness transforms into clarity, energy, and purpose. Being lost isn't failure, it's transformation. There's a moment in life that feels like standing in a dense fog. The road ahead is unclear, and the path behind no longer feels like yours. You're not moving backward, but you're not moving forward either. You feel still, disoriented, stuck. You call it being lost. But what if this feeling isn't something to fear? What if it's a sign you're on the edge of becoming? Feeling lost is often misunderstood. We see it as weakness, a personal flaw, or failure to thrive. But in truth, it's a deeply human experience, one that signals transformation. It arises when old identities, beliefs, or ambitions no longer fit, and the new ones haven't yet fully taken form. It's a spiritual and emotional in-between, a shedding of skin before the next chapter begins. These lost seasons are uncomfortable, yes, but they are also sacred. Just as nature moves through cycles of rest and rebirth, so do we. Trees don't bloom year-round. Caterpillars retreat before they fly. And sometimes your soul needs silence before it speaks again. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once likened being lost to wandering an unfamiliar landscape. In that space of uncertainty, we begin to observe more carefully. We learn to listen, not to the noise of the world, but to the quiet hum of our own intuition. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a new path begins to reveal itself. So if you're in a season of not knowing, don't rush out of it. Don't shame yourself for pausing. This is where clarity is born, not in constant motion, but in stillness. This isn't failure, it's formation. You're not broken, you're becoming. Trust that this moment, however unclear, is preparing you for something more aligned, more honest, and more you than ever before. It's not laziness, it's fear in disguise. Sometimes what we call laziness is nothing more than fear wearing a mask. The fear of starting, the fear of failing, the fear of being seen and falling short. So instead of chasing the dream, we push it aside. We scroll, distract, procrastinate, not because we're incapable, but because we're afraid of what happens if we try and it doesn't work out. Fear often shows up when something truly matters to us. A desire for change, a dream buried deep, a life we secretly hope for but haven't dared to pursue. And because the stakes feel high, we avoid. We tell ourselves it's not the right time or that we're just unmotivated. But beneath that surface hesitation is something far more tender. The fear of stepping into the unknown. The truth is, avoiding the things that scare us feels safer, at least in the short term. It keeps us in the familiar, even if the familiar is unfulfilling. But over time, this avoidance erodes our confidence, disconnects us from our purpose, and leaves us feeling even more lost. Yet avoidance is also a compass. It points directly to what we care about most. The dream you keep putting off, the project you never quite start. That's not laziness. That's your soul trying to protect itself, and also trying to wake you up. So the next time you feel the weight of procrastination, pause and ask, what am I really avoiding? Is it discomfort, rejection, not being good enough? Then ask, what would I gain if I faced it anyway? Because courage doesn't mean being fearless. It means moving anyway, with the fear, not in spite of it. Sometimes the most important step is the one we're most afraid to take. But once you do, you'll realize the fear wasn't there to stop you. It was there to show you what truly matters. In the silence you find yourself. In a world that glorifies speed, noise, and constant motion, stillness can feel like a threat. We fill our days with distractions, scrolling, scheduling, consuming, afraid of what might surface if we pause. But what if the clarity we're searching for isn't in doing more, but in being still enough to hear what's already inside us? When you feel lost, your first instinct might be to move faster, work harder, or seek answers from the outside. But the truth is, the answers you long for are quiet. They don't shout, they whisper. And you can only hear them when the world grows quiet and you finally turn inward. In the silence, your inner voice returns, the one that knows what matters most to you, what you've been suppressing, what you deeply want but have been too afraid to name. Stillness gives that voice a chance to speak. It's no wonder we avoid it. Stillness demands honesty. It confronts us with truths we've buried beneath busyness, but it also offers healing. It's where we remember who we are beyond our roles, responsibilities, and fears. So instead of fearing stillness, welcome it. Sit with your discomfort. Observe your thoughts. Breathe into the space between distractions. You may be surprised by what emerges. Not confusion, but clarity. Not weakness, but wisdom. Because in the quiet, you don't get lost. You come home. The blueprint isn't broken, it just wasn't made for you. From a young age, we're handed a map, a life blueprint promising success, stability, and happiness. It goes something like this. Go to school, get good grades, land a stable job, climb the ladder, buy a home, retire comfortably. It's neat, predictable, safe. But what happens when you follow the map and still feel lost? So many people do everything right and yet carry a quiet ache inside, a feeling that something is missing. Others try to follow the plan but stumble, fall behind, or simply don't resonate with it and assume they're the problem. Maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I'm not enough. But the real problem isn't you. It's the assumption that one path fits all. The truth is, life is not a formula. Purpose isn't found in someone else's checklist. And meaning can't be mass-produced. The blueprint works for some, but it doesn't speak to everyone's soul. And when you force yourself into a life that doesn't fit, it's no wonder you feel disconnected. As Viktor Frankl wrote, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. If your life looks successful on paper but feels empty in your heart, it's not failure. It's misalignment. It takes courage to question the map you were given. But that's the first step to creating your own. You weren't meant to copy someone else's life. You were meant to craft your own with intention, creativity, and truth. So if the old blueprint doesn't work for you, set it down. Begin again. Ask yourself, what matters most to me? What kind of life feels alive, honest, and mine? Because real fulfillment comes not from following the map, but from finding your own way. When emptiness speaks, listen. There's a certain kind of heaviness that's hard to describe. It's not physical fatigue, and it's not quite sadness. It's the quiet ache of disconnection, a gnawing sense that something's missing, even if life looks fine on the surface. Psychologists call this feeling existential frustration, and far from being a flaw, it's one of the most important signals your inner self can send. Existential frustration arises when your need for meaning goes unmet. You may be working hard, achieving goals, doing everything you should, but if those actions don't align with your deeper values or sense of purpose, they begin to feel hollow. Over time, that hollowness grows into discouragement, restlessness, even despair. But here's the truth. This feeling isn't failure. It's feedback. It's your soul's way of telling you, you've outgrown something. It's time to realign. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl emphasized that human beings are not just pleasure-seeking or achievement-driven. At our core, we are meaning-seeking. When we lose touch with that meaning, whether through distraction, pressure, or simply going through the motions, we begin to feel lost. That's why existential frustration shouldn't be ignored or numbed. It should be honored. It's a compass pointing you toward truth, toward change, toward the parts of yourself that long to be heard. So if you're feeling frustrated or aimless, don't rush to fix it. Sit with it. Ask, what parts of my life feel empty? What have I been doing just to meet expectations? And what would I do if I truly listened to my heart? Because sometimes what we call discomfort is really the first step toward clarity. And that ache in your chest, it might just be the beginning of becoming whole again. You're not failing. You're learning how to begin again. We live in a culture that equates success with speed and perfection. If you're not constantly moving forward, producing results, or living up to some idealized image of achievement, you're often seen as failing. And worse, you start to see yourself that way too. But what if the truth is far gentler, more human, and more empowering? You're not failing, you're finding your way, and that process is rarely linear, tidy, or predictable. Too often we turn on ourselves in our most vulnerable moments. When we feel lost or unmotivated, we don't offer understanding, we offer judgment. We call ourselves lazy, weak, or broken. But healing doesn't grow in the soil of self-criticism. Growth begins with self-compassion, the courageous act of treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer to someone you love. As Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once said, to love ourselves is to understand ourselves. That includes embracing the messy, uncertain, imperfect parts of our journey. You're allowed to not have it all figured out. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to start over as many times as you need. Failure, when reframed, becomes feedback. It teaches you what doesn't align. It sheds a light on what still needs healing. It helps you uncover what matters most. And it's often through those perceived failures that we come home to ourselves. So instead of asking, why am I not further along? Ask, how can I be more gentle with myself as I grow? Because you are not a machine. You are a living, evolving human being. And your worth was never meant to be measured by output, progress, or perfection. This moment, right here, is not your downfall. It's your turning point. And kindness, not criticism, is what will help you rise. Reignite what makes you feel alive. When you're feeling lost, directionless, or disconnected, the common advice is to get back to work or stay productive. But what if the answer isn't pushing harder, but reconnecting with what makes you come alive? Deep within you lies a spark, a quiet personal rhythm that lights up when you're immersed in something meaningful. Maybe it's painting, writing, gardening, building, problem solving, mentoring, or learning something new. These aren't just hobbies or luxuries. They're pathways back to your core self. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called this state flow. Those moments when time disappears, distractions fade, and you are completely present in what you're doing. In flow, there's no judgment, no pressure, just energy, focus, and joy. And in that space, we remember. This is what it feels like to be alive. When we lose touch with passion, life becomes mechanical. Our days blur together. We confuse existing with living. But even the smallest reconnection to passion, 10 minutes a day, can be enough to spark momentum and rebuild a sense of purpose. You don't need to leap into a new life overnight. Start small and ask yourself, what made me feel alive as a child? What would I do if no one was watching? What have I put off because it didn't seem productive enough? Your passions are clues. They whisper reminders of who you are beyond the roles you play and the expectations placed on you. They don't always have to become your career. Sometimes they're simply the thing that makes life feel real again. So give yourself permission to follow what feels good, even if it seems small or silly. Joy is not a distraction from the journey. It's the fuel for it. And in rekindling what you love, you just might find your way back to yourself. Start small. It's how everything big begins. When you're feeling lost or overwhelmed, the idea of turning your life around can feel like an impossible mountain to climb. You look ahead and see how far you think you need to go, how much needs to change, and you freeze. But here's a quiet truth most people overlook. You don't need to leap. You just need to take one step. Transformation doesn't begin with grand gestures. It begins with small, intentional actions. Tiny movements that whisper to your soul, I'm trying again. Maybe it's waking up 15 minutes earlier to journal, reading one page of a book that inspires you, reaching out to someone who makes you feel understood. These little acts may seem insignificant, but they are the building blocks of momentum. Every great journey begins this way. No artist paints a masterpiece in a day. No healed heart mends all at once. No meaningful life is crafted through a single breakthrough. It's built through consistency, curiosity, and the willingness to keep showing up. Even on the days when you don't feel ready, setting small goals grounds you. It reminds you that progress is still possible, even when clarity feels far away. And each time you follow through, you build trust with yourself again. The kind of trust that says, I can do hard things. I'm capable of change. So instead of asking, how do I fix my whole life? Ask, what's one thing I can do today to feel a little more like myself? Let that be enough, because healing isn't about rushing toward a finish line. It's about gently, persistently returning to who you truly are, one step at a time. And when you look back one day, you'll realize those small steps didn't just move you forward, they changed everything. Comparison is the thief of your true path. In today's hyper-connected world, it's nearly impossible to escape the constant stream of other people's lives. On social media, we see curated highlights, promotions, relationships, adventures, success stories. And slowly, without even realizing it, we begin to measure our own worth against these filtered snapshots. They're doing more. They've figured it out. Why am I still stuck? But here's the truth. Comparison is an illusion, and it distorts everything that matters. It convinces you that your path is wrong simply because it doesn't look like someone else's. It blinds you to your own growth, your unique timing, your quiet victories. It tells you there's one definition of success, and if you're not living it, you're falling behind. But your journey isn't meant to mirror anyone else's. Each life unfolds at its own pace, in its own rhythm, with lessons and breakthroughs uniquely designed for the person living it. You are not late. You are not less. You are exactly where you're meant to be, learning, evolving, becoming. When you constantly compare, you disconnect from your intuition. You begin to chase goals that don't belong to you. You silence the voice inside that says, "This is who I am." Letting go of comparison doesn't mean you stop caring or striving. It means you start measuring your life based on your values, not someone else's timeline. So the next time you catch yourself scrolling through someone else's story and feeling small, pause, breathe, come back to your own life. Ask, what makes me feel fulfilled? What does success mean to me? Because you weren't born to live someone else's version of life. You were born to live your own, with honesty, courage, and grace. And when you stop comparing, you start discovering who you really are. When you feel lost, you're not broken. You're being called back to yourself. In a world obsessed with productivity, it's easy to confuse exhaustion with failure and stillness with laziness. But what if your lack of motivation isn't a flaw, but a signal? What if feeling lost is actually your soul's way of asking you to pause, reflect, and realign? We're taught to follow a formula, study, work, succeed, and if we deviate from that path, we blame ourselves. But life isn't one size fits all. The traditional blueprint doesn't speak to everyone's purpose. Feeling disconnected isn't proof that you're broken. It's proof that you're human. And sometimes losing your way is how you find a better one. Instead of judging yourself in moments of confusion, try listening. What parts of your life feel heavy or hollow? What lights you up, even quietly? Reconnecting with your passions, your values, and your inner voice may not give you instant clarity, but it will begin to rebuild your sense of direction. Start small. Journal. Sit in silence. Create something. Talk to someone you trust. Let yourself move slowly but intentionally. Most importantly, let go of comparison. Your path is yours for a reason. You're not behind. You're on a different journey. The truth is, you don't need to have everything figured out to move forward. You just need to believe that being lost doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're on the edge of becoming.